Welcome to Straight Up Paleo, featuring primal health coach Christina Rice and nutritional therapy practitioner Kara Halderman. This is the podcast where you get the best nutrition tips straight up with no BS. We answer listener questions and talk about all things paleo, diet, and health. Drop us an email at straightuppaleo@gmail.com. And now here's your super rad and oh so knowledgeable SUP sisters, Christina and Kara. SUP!
Hey, Kara.
Hey, SUP, Christina.
What's up?
Woo, I'm all riled up right now because one, we just got off that interview.
I know.
It was awesome. Two, I've been working since 5 a.m. It's been a good day.
Wow. It's so weird because it's like, I have this problem with the time change with everybody because I feel like most of the people I talk to are all Central Time or East Coast time. And so I'll be like starting my day and starting things and everyone else is ending. Like, you know, like you got off work and I had just only done like an hour or two of work, which is so weird to me.
The struggle.
And
it's funny that you don't like the people you talk to aren't in your time zone.
Yeah. Well, and same with like, I'll talk to you, or like yesterday I had a client and she was like, I just finished eating dinner. And I was like, oh, I just finished eating lunch.
Literally, life, we used to text and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to bed. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's so, oh man, but time zones are all off. But I feel very bamboozled too, just because traveling, so much traveling.
I'm psyched. I'm so excited to go to Austin and hit up Paleo Effects. Anytime I go to Austin, it's basically the best time of my life. I love it.
Is it going to be really hot? Am I going to drown?
Honestly, let me open my handy weather app. It's going to be 80.
Oh my God.
No,
that sounds
tell me
horrible.
you think that's hot. Don't tell me you think that's hot. No, that's nice. Like, seriously, that's nice. In the summer, Texas can get up to 100 degrees or more. It's pretty blistering.
You haven't been to LA. It's like 110 here.
What?
Yeah.
I thought LA was always, always 80.
No, during summer it gets so hot. I have to leave because I don't have air conditioning.
That's a struggle.
Yeah, so it's gross. But I don't like when it's like hot and humid. I like when it's a nice like 75 even temperature. I just don't like to sweat, honestly. So it'll be good though. We'll see lots of people at Paleo Effects. I'm excited to see everyone in real life and gallivant around Austin, and it'll be good. But when this comes out, we'll be long past that.
Yeah, it will be way past that. But honestly, one thing that I'm really excited about for Paleo Effects is the vendor space and meeting all the vendors. And this year, our new BFFs from SomniFix, Nicholas from SomniFix is going to be there, and we get to meet them in the flesh. And basically, I just want to I know he's getting some really cool shirts, and I just want to wear one of the shirts, and I think they're going to say nose breather or nose breather on them. And I just want to wear it around with a SomniFix mouth tape on. It's hilarious because at Paleo Effects, like everyone walks around this convention wearing blue blocker glasses. And I'm like, come on, guys. But anyways, everyone walks around wearing blue blocker glasses. And I'm just like, I'm going to walk around wearing my SomniFix.
Yeah, we should. That would be so funny.
You know how many people would ask us, what is that?
I know. But then we wouldn't be able to answer because our mouths would be taped shut. Honestly.
Big struggle.
Wait, did I show you the mug that my friend Lisa from Zinc Nutrition got me for my birthday?
I saw it on your Instagram stories.
Oh my God, it was so funny. It says mouth breather. I need to take a Sharpie to it though and cross out mouth and put nose.
What is that from?
Stranger Things.
That's what it is. Stranger Things. I only watched the first season, but
yeah. She got it at Urban Outfitters, I think, but it's just like funny, hilarious, because we all know that Kara and I like to breathe out of our noses when we sleep because that's how the cool kids do it.
That's how you're supposed to do it, man. And that's why we love SomniFix. And basically, we just want to be partnered with them forever because we cannot sleep without our SomniFix. And if you aren't sick of hearing us talk about it by now, it's mouth tape. And you're basically taping your mouth while you are asleep so you can breathe through your nose. And you can actually, by breathing through your nose, you're getting access to deeper sleep cycles because you're in a more parasympathetic state, which means you're more relaxed. And you're not going to like freak out or suffocate or anything like that because it does have a little vent in the mouth hole. So you can breathe through it. I've actually caught myself breathing through it in the middle of the night, which probably isn't good, but whatever. Anyways, so you can breathe through it. It's hypoallergenic. It's actually pretty comfortable. And once you get past the acclimation period, you will never have a better night's sleep in your life. I can't live without it. Christina and I travel with it all the time, and we just want to rep it 24/7. So you guys can also get some SomniFix if you would like. They're on Amazon. You can go to their website, and we do have a coupon code. It's SUP Sleep for 10% off.
You guys, this will change your life. Everybody tells us how much it changes their life. Everyone's skeptical at first, then they test it out, they get used to it, and then they fall in love. So I really think you should give it a shot. You should really give it a shot. Use that coupon code and you will change your sleep forever. I promise. So I'm super excited to meet Nicholas though, and everyone else. The vendors are definitely really fun at any type of event like that. I think the best part of the events like that, I'm going to go into the talks, but I'm more excited just to meet people and interact with people than listen to talks. Because I kind of already know what people are going to say. Part.
Oh, yeah. We know what they're going to say. Yeah. I don't know. There may be something a little bit inventive, but at Paleo FX, you kind of know what they're going to talk about, you know? But I went to Paleo FX last year. I didn't go to any of the talks. I literally hung out in the expo for 3 days. Corey and we hung out in the expo, and I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast. It's not really a story, but basically all we did was hang out at the Bulletproof coffee station and drink bulletproof coffee and eat bulletproof bars. And it's safe to say that we got super sick after living off of bulletproof coffee and bulletproof bars. Do not eat more than 2 bulletproof bars in a day. Your stomach will be a wreck. Sorry, Bulletproof. They taste amazing. But it is just so much fun. And we met an incredible amount of people. It was absolutely crazy. People were pulling me onto the exercise floor, wanting me to do CrossFit. And I'm like, no, I've never done CrossFit my whole entire life. Please don't make me do this. And it was crazy. But we had an amazing time. So we're just going to be hanging out in the expo the whole time.
It's going to be so much fun. And I also kind of just want to bring something up because it came up on the interview that you're about to listen to, because we were talking about Paleo FX and just any type of conference or thing where they're doing talks like this in general. I just want to caution people. Okay, there's a lot of really cool information being put out there, but when you're listening to any type of information, whether that be at some conference like Paleo FX or KetoCon, or if you're listening to podcasts, I think the issue is people just whatever they hear, they take as the word of God. Okay? Just because someone is, quote, legit enough to be up there standing talking doesn't mean that what they're saying has to be what you do or your truth. They're putting out their experience or their research or whatever. But I just think with every piece of information you consume, you can take that with a skeptical ear, no matter what it is. And I think that I see a lot of people, they'll go into a talk and they'll come out and be like, that person just promoted this. I'm doing that now. It's going to change my life. We need to just calm down and take information as interesting research for ourselves and then take it, figure everything out for yourself. Don't just let someone else tell you what is the best thing to do, just in general.
And you have to remember that conferences, while they may have good intention, they all have an agenda. So Paleo FX and KetoCon, obviously their agenda is going to be towards paleo and keto. Yeah. And same with any other big conference or you said, podcaster, even us, we all have agendas, and it doesn't mean it's of malicious intent or anything like that, but we all have a point that we want to get across. So like Christina was saying, it's not what you hear there is what it is. It's just them trying to push their point of view, and they get speakers that they know are going to give interesting talks and sell, and also reformed their point of view. So you just have to remember that always. So that's the other reason I don't really care about going to the talks, honestly.
I think it's really interesting. I love hearing what people have to say, but I just see this a lot. People are very impressionable, and it kind of kills me because they'll just hear one person talk and then they think that that is the answer to life. And I'm like, whoa, let's just like calm our jets, you know, let's just calm down. And I know we kind of had this issue before when we started bringing on more guests and people were telling us how confused they were because we were bringing someone on who was keto, and then someone was high protein, and then someone was this and that, and vegan, and what are we saying? We're confusing. Well, we're not putting people on the podcast to tell you this is how to live your life. We're just like exposing you to really awesome people, and everyone has a different perspective, and that's okay. That's
exactly.
Great.
And how boring would it be if we brought on people that all had the same exact perspective?
Exactly.
And you heard it just over and over and over again. You're like, all right, Christina and Kara, I get it. I know how to eat this way now. And then you would stop listening. So, I mean, from so many perspectives, it would be boring. And also kind of the goal in life is to always learn more about diet and to progress. And if something like progressing to keto or progressing to whole foods paleo or high carb paleo, whatever works for you, is going to help, then we're definitely going to talk about it because this is all about you finding what works best for you. And kind of like carrying on with that, our guest that we have on today is definitely one in the camp of keto. And you guys probably know him. His name is Jimmy Moore. I love him as a human being. He's become a good friend of mine. And the reason that I know him is I actually took over one of his podcasts, Low Carb Conversations. And that's how I got into podcasting in the first place. And you kind of heard us talk about something in the beginning of this interview where he was like, I saw you and believed in you. Like basically he picked me out and said that I could be a podcaster. And he's really what sparked me into loving podcasting and all of that. So I owe pretty much all of this to him for being the catalyst. And he's just an overall amazing guy, but you could call him a keto expert. He started out as a blogger. Livin, Vida, Low Carb is his blog. And he was just blogging about his experiments with like an Atkins diet, low carb diet, and then a ketogenic diet. And then he went on to becoming like a best-selling author with Keto Clarity, Cholesterol Clarity. He has a new book out, The Keto Cure, and he has like 5 different podcasts. So he's insane and he's extremely entertaining, but he also knows a lot. He's been doing keto for a very long time. He's done a lot of experiments. He's famous for a lot of N=1 type experiments, so self-experimentation. And he's heard a lot from his listeners as well from his podcast. So he has tons of experience with keto and overall is just a fun guy to talk with. So I think this interview was super cool.
Yeah, it was so much fun to talk to him. He is just like, I have no words to explain his aura and spirit. He is just like a ball of energy. I love it.
I do too. And we go over tons of topics. We just kind of wanted to know more about him and ask about his life and where he came from, because a lot of us, we know Jimmy Moore and we just know him as the keto guy, but we don't really know how did he get here? Like, what did he do to be here? And well, who's he like as a person? So we just wanted to get to know him. And then we kind of got into some nitty gritty stuff about keto and asking more specific questions towards him. He did some really crazy, like high protein experiment lately, and we asked him about that. So you're going to hear his opinions all about keto and really what works best for him. And that's where this all kind of ties back into what we were just saying about how just because it worked for Jimmy Moore, and he's going to say that over and over again, but just because it worked for Jimmy Moore doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. So just because we're giving this extreme like opinion of his doesn't mean that it's going to work for you or anything like that. So it's just about listening to him and applying what you want from that.
Absolutely. So I think everyone is going to really enjoy this. He's the OG podcaster, so he also just is great. Like, he has a really good podcasting voice, you know?
He's incredible.
He's nice to listen to. So I think you guys are going to get a lot of value out of this, a lot of fun. And without further ado, here is the one and only Jimmy Moore.
So Jimmy, what's going on?
So guys, what's up?
I feel like you're our biggest fan.
You are.
Well, as soon as you said the name of your show was Straight Up Paleo, I said, so you mean SUP?
Yeah.
And you guys went, oh yeah, I guess it does spell the word SUP.
No, we knew that. That's why we made it that title.
Oh, okay. It was an evil plan, an evil plot behind the scenes that it just took me a little while to figure it out, I guess.
We wanted to see how many people would catch on to that. So
I caught it right away.
Yeah. But then your wheel started spinning and you wanted to just start making supplements.
I know, right? SUP,
which is
and the SUP
fabulous
supplements.
Marketing on your part.
You have a marketing brain for sure.
It never stops. Christine will tell you I am always thinking of ideas, and about 99% of them never see the light of day. But it's that 1% of brilliance that is helping right now. Yeah.
I think it's more than 1%. What were you doing before you got into the whole, into this whole space? I don't even know what you were doing before this.
Well, what's funny, everybody asks that question, and it's funny. I tell people. And, you know, I'm a Christian, so I believe that things are destined and that you're pointed in the direction that you need to go. And I've worked a lot of menial jobs over the years. My dad owned restaurants when I was growing up, so I did a lot of kind of restaurant work when I was in college. And then after getting out of college, did a lot of customer service types of work because I'm good with people. And then I had one job where I did a little bit of radio, like Christian radio. That was Amy Grant. Now here's Michael W. Smith. That was literally all I did, but it kind of foreshadowed what I do now professionally. And then I worked at a corporate office answering emails for a pretty major corporation, 3,000 plus emails a day. And so now I get 500 plus emails a day. And I'm like, yeah, that's nothing.
It was prepping you.
Yeah.
It really was. And, you know, in hindsight, looking back at it, you know, and you guys are still young in your life, and maybe you're like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Why is that happening? I truly believe all things work together for some purpose and a good in your life. You just have to wait long enough to get there.
I totally agree with that. Like, I don't even really know where I'm going, but I know that all the stepping stones that I'm on right now are going to lead up to wherever it is that I'm supposed to be, or at least that's what I believe. But did you ever feel like you had like a destined path, or like you knew what you wanted to do, or were you kind of just floating along doing whatever?
I'm going to answer that question, but you know what? I saw in you something pretty talented and something pretty special, that you could be a podcaster even before you knew you could be a podcaster and be good at it. And so that's something I want you to take with you forever, is that someone saw in me something pretty special and believed in me. And then that gave you confidence to actually go do it. And now what's this, like your third or fourth podcast you've done? So, I mean,
yes,
you're running with it. And so the same thing for me. No, I never imagined in a million years I'd be a 3-time international best-selling author and well-known online because of my mouth, talking on podcasts and writing books. You know, this never in a million years was there. But on the flip side of that, I always felt like when I was in jobs, especially in the 20s, you know, 20s sucked. Because you always worked jobs where you were not educated enough, not experienced enough to get somewhere, you know, high within an organization. And in that big company I told you about that I answered all the emails, I always thought I had talent to be able to help in the marketing team and to really kind of use my skills in that area. And yet I never was. I was never even afforded that opportunity. And it always kind of motivated me behind the scenes of, well, dang, I'm going to prove these people wrong. And I think I have. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, you definitely have, like 100%. And thank you for what you said. Like you said, you actually were probably the first person that gave me like real confidence that I could be a podcaster and that I could start my own thing and do it on my own. And whether or not I know exactly what that is, having that one person that believed in you and told you like you could do it, It makes all the difference.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
I didn't come up with podcasting like that I was going to podcast. This gentleman, he was reading my blog. I started my blog a year. I lost 180 pounds in 2004. That's what I was most famous for, losing weight on the Atkins diet. And I started blogging in 2005. And about a year later, this guy writes to me and he says, I love your blog. Your writing style is incredible. And if you talk half as good as you write, you got to be doing a podcast. Now, mind you, 2006. How old were you guys in 2006?
11.
You were 11. Thank you.
I was 11.
And I feel really old. So that was when he said, you got to get on this podcasting thing. And it was way ahead of the curve. I mean, podcasts didn't really take off till iPhones took off. And now everybody has podcasting in their hands. And so I started doing it kind of clunky, but I got good at it when nobody was listening. But it was him, and he's still my producer to this day. All these years later, he's produced every single podcast I've ever done. And, well over 2,500 episodes of podcasts that I've done just on my show.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Was it 1,400 with Livin, Vida, low carb show, and then Keto Talks up there at a couple of hundred. It adds up really fast. So we, he believed in me even when I didn't see the talent. And so I'm always on the lookout for doing that, like finding people. And even when I got success in the book writing, I had my publisher said, hey, help us find some other people. And so it's been really gratifying to be able to go and reach down and go, all right, you, because you have a lot of talent that I see, and I think you could be potentially good. And so it's pretty powerful that, if we just lift each other up, and I'm all about a rising tide, raising all ships, and not this kind of dog eat dog. I kind of got sick of that in the paleo community. It got really ugly there for a little while, where everybody seemed to be in it for themselves. The thing about the keto community that's really attracted me as a juxtaposition to paleo is I haven't really seen a lot of that. There's a little bit of that, but I haven't seen a lot of that. Most of us in this community that are the leaders, we love on each other and we brag on each other when we have new projects come out. And it's not this vicious competition. Our competition is trying to get those people to stop eating ding dongs and drinking Coca-Cola.
Yes.
That's who we're trying to unite against, not each other.
Do you feel like there's a little bit of competition, though, in the keto space, or maybe not competition, but like tension between the different schools of thought of ketogenic diets?
The mainstream school of thought is that a ketogenic diet that is well formulated is one that is low in carbohydrates, moderate in protein, and high in fat. Now, there is a segment of the ketogenic community that tends to believe that a higher protein intake and a more moderate fat intake is the way to go. Unfortunately, I think they're a very small minority. I would say the vast majority of the people that are doing keto, as has become popularized in the culture, they're doing it as a well-formulated, not really counting calories, listening to their satiety signals, low-carb, moderate protein, high-fat diet. So, those people are very vocal and believe. And then you even have people on the extreme end who say, just eat all red meat. This whole carnivore diet, and which I think probably can be done really well if you eat enough fat. But I hear what you're saying. There are people that would say, well, there seems to be a lot of tension. It really isn't. I think most people in the mainstream of the keto message are all on the same page.
Why do you think the paleo community has more? I didn't realize that, you thought it was that competitive. Why do you think that is?
Keep in mind, I was the token low carb guy.
Yeah, right. True.
In the paleo community for so long, like 2011 when AHS first came, and then Paleo FX came in 2012. I was always the guy that was invited because I was, doing pretty paleo at the time. I like to tell people I eat primaleo ketogenic. So I'm primal because I still have a little dairy, paleo because of the real food aspect. And I appreciate paleo pushing that on me, and I've now tried to push it on the keto community, eat real food, and then ketogenic for the obvious reasons. Yeah, it seemed like because paleo had less of a definition of what it meant besides just eat real food, that there seemed to be always fights over macros, and it was like, okay, someone that's CrossFit and eating 200 grams of carbohydrate in their diet, that's paleo as long as it stayed real food. But then on the flip side, I'd be like, well, what about, 50 grams or less of carbohydrate trying to be ketogenic? Well, that's not paleo. I'm like, well, they're both on the paleo template. Chris Kresser often talked about there being this wide template of carbohydrate and shifting around the macros. And so I never understood why low carb keto was so ostracized, where an entire lecture would be presented from the main stage of one of these major conferences in paleo, basically telling people ketogenic diets are dangerous. And I haven't been back to that conference ever since that happened, especially when I submitted a talk to respond to that and they turned it down.
No way. I can't believe that.
Yeah, like I said, I love my paleo friends, but I miss seeing them because I just refuse to continue to support those kinds of conferences that would allow that kind of misinformation to be put out there without an adequate response. And I would have been the perfect person to respond to it because I had a whole book about it at the time.
Yeah.
Keto Clarity had been out for about a year or so, and I could have easily responded with science. And I think because I didn't have any kind of D after my name or NTP or anything like that after my name, maybe they didn't think I would bring legitimate science to the discussion.
I was going to ask you, do you feel like people have maybe underestimated you because you don't have the quote unquote credentials?
Can I tell you a little secret? Jimmy Moore Empowered Patient is so much more powerful than Jimmy Moore MD.
Oh,
Jimmy Moore PhD, Jimmy Moore RD, Jimmy Moore NTP. I was offered all those letters, full scholarships to get all of that stuff. And I thought about it long and hard. And of course, I've had my branding forever. I mean, everybody knows my name now, so I don't need that to legitimize who and what I am. Because people that follow me because I provide good information. And here's the other thing. I can say whatever I want without any kind of
legal repercussion.
Yes. I look at all these RD friends of mine that they're having to leave the profession because they can't truly say what they want to say because the Dietetics Association, wags their finger at them and says, you can't say that. We don't believe in butter. How dare you tell people to eat butter? And so, I mean, I love the power of not having any restriction. I'm not beholden to anybody. And so at the end of the day, I can truly say anything. Now, I'm always responsible with what I say. I don't just, go off the handle and say whatever. But if I want to say something pretty blunt, I say it pretty blunt and don't apologize for it.
I'm glad you kind of brought that up because I always think this is really interesting when I'm hearing from other people and they'll say, well, I don't trust so-and-so because they're not a doctor or they're not an RD or they're not this or that. And it's always interesting to me because when I was entering this space and trying to figure out health information, whenever I saw someone was a doctor and RD, I would kind of stray away and try and find somebody who had anecdotal experience because I always felt like their perspective was tainted by what they had been taught in school or like what they could or couldn't say because of those letters. And so I think that that's a different perspective that a lot of people don't recognize is that you are allowed to say what you want and like you can speak your truth and other people feel like they have their hands tied to an extent. Well,
and here's the other thing to that as well. If I had PhD or RD or MD after my name, people would say, well, of course, he believes that. Look, he's got the credentials. Mm-hmm. And so, I love the idea of an average everyday dude, which you guys have met me, I'm just a dude. So, being out there and just sharing and not having to have this aura of letters after the name to give me legitimacy. I think anyone with a voice who's speaking truth, you have legitimacy. And a lot of people, they say, well, I don't want to put my name out there. What do I have to offer? I mean, look where I started is what I tell them. Mm-hmm. I was a guy that had a story. I overcame sugar addiction, lost a significant amount of weight, and more importantly, got very healthy. And now I'm just passing along those things to people as well. And I'm starting to see a lot more kind of Jimmy Moores out there. The Keto Connect people, I think, are doing some really fabulous work.
I love them.
I love them.
I love them.
And Keto Savage and Crystal, these guys, they're not PhD, RD, MDs, anything like that. They're just people that are living their lives that have some great information to share. And I think that's how we're going to reach the culture. As much as I would love it coming from the medical profession or the dietetics profession or even NTPs, I don't think it's going to come from all of those professional organizations. I think it's going to be average, everyday people like Jimmy Moore.
Yeah. And the thing is, okay, like people like you and like Matt and Mecca from Keto Connect, like you guys are putting out such great information. But the problem is that now there are also a lot of people who also, are putting their names out there, but are putting out horrible information. So how do people differentiate who is legit and putting out good info from people who are just as loud at putting out bad information? Like I think of Freely the Banana Girl, she has a huge following, but it's really hard because there are people that put out like your stuff, like what you put out there. And then there are people like her. And I just I just get so frustrated.
Well, and the thing I tell people, I get that question a lot too. How do I know who to trust?
Yeah.
I always tell people, follow someone for a period of time. I don't mind that you stalk me for a little while and look at my Instagram feed. I see Christina liking all my posts. So I know there's people that, they watch. Oh, okay, that looks pretty good. Click, or sometimes you'll comment and that kind of thing. And so I think follow someone. And if it passes the smell test of like just common sense, wow, this seems reasonable. If the people are quoting studies, if they're giving information from experts that are well known in the field. I mean, that's one reason I love doing the Livin La Vida low carb show is I literally can talk directly with all of these great experts. I mean, literally you name a person in this space, I've talked to them, even the vegans, even Freely's boyfriend. I had Harley Johnstone on Durian Rider one time. Very interesting man, by the way.
I bet.
But yeah, I mean, it is difficult, but I tell people try to look for ones that have kind of been established for a while. Not that there's anything wrong with new people that pop up. The Keto Connect people are relatively new, but I think they're doing an outstanding job. And I think the thing that sets them apart and hopefully me apart from maybe some people that are in it to sell you an affiliate link so they can make lots of money off this keto movement is we're giving lots and lots and lots of information that doesn't cost you a dime. I mean, they're on Instagram every single day answering questions. I'm doing podcasts 5 days a week, 4 different shows and different formats giving information. It doesn't cost you a single thing to listen to any of my show, and it never will, by the way. I don't mind that you buy my books. I don't mind that you support my sponsors, but it's not a requirement to get the good information I'm sharing.
I just want to add to that. I think a really good thing for people to pay attention to is it's like kind of what you said, like who people are connected with. Because that kind of helps legitimize someone without, any letters. Like, you are very well connected, and the fact that you are friends and have access to all these, like, really incredible people in the field kind of, like, helps to legitimize you, too. Same with, like, me and Kara. Like, I know that people trust us because we are friends with people who they also trust in the space. So that can be a good kind of way to tell if someone's trustworthy. Like, if someone has, it's not how many followers someone has, but, like, the quality of those followers.
So you guys are a match made in heaven. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Y'all act like sisters. It's really cute watching you on Instagram.
Aw, we are. We are. We're just in different states. But
so
okay, I want to talk more about how you found keto. So you started off with Atkins, right? Yep. How did you find how did that come about? Let's go way back.
It's all Christine's mother's fault. So Christina's my wife, and her mother, my mother-in-law, was reading a book in 2004. Little did I know, in the summer of 2004, she saw this mass market paperback book in like a grocery store, picked it up. It was the Atkins book, the new Atkins Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. And that was 2004. She read it and showed it to my father-in-law. We think Jimmy might like this. So they gave that diet book to Jimmy for Christmas.
Oh, my God.
Not so
and you didn't throw it away or anything like that?
I had been given diet books from this lady every single year. I'm like, really? Yes, I know I'm fat. Thank you. But I was like, you know what? I have heard a lot about this Atkins diet thing, but I'd never actually learned about it. So I'm like, okay, I've got the book now. Let's read this thing. Dr. Atkins, a cardiologist. Okay, this is cool. Eat less carbs. I'm sorry. What? Doesn't he know that's where you get your energy from? Well, I didn't understand that. So, okay, keep reading. Eat more fat, even saturated fat. Hold on. This is a cardiologist telling you to eat the very food we know will clog your arteries and give you heart disease and kill you. All of those things that we always believed just popped into the head. And I'm sitting here reading this book totally incredulous that how in the world, number one, do you lose weight doing this? And number two, not keel over halfway between doing it. But I thought, you know what? I had tried and failed on so many diets over the years. I had to find something that would get my weight and health under control. And so that's how I found the Atkins diet and started it as a New Year's resolution in 2004. Ended up losing about 100 pounds in 100 days. I mean, it was just flying off of me.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, I came from a diet, this is going to shock you, of 16 cans of Coca-Cola a day.
No way.
I'm not kidding you.
That's commitment.
That's amazing that I wasn't a type 2 diabetic by the time I got to this, because I did that for many years. By the grace of God, I did not get that. Christine will tell you I would buy those 10 for $10 Little Debbie snack cake boxes. And so I'd eat 2 whole boxes watching television at night. And, of course, fast food every day. I was a junk food junkie, probably 1,600 grams of carbohydrate alone every single day.
Damn.
How did you make that transition? Like, did you still have episodes where you still found yourself kind of like binging on that type of food, or did you literally just go cold turkey and it was done?
So here's the thing, and the great question. So here's the thing. I started off and I said, you know what? I'm going to give myself every 6 to 8 weeks a cheat meal. And so I knew I had a cheat meal coming up. I don't recommend that now, by the way, but that's what I did. As a 410-pound man, I was like, okay, I've got to do something. So I started this, went from 1,600 grams of carbs a day to 20. That hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of you consult clients all the time. You know, if you did something that draconian, it would hurt, and it did. And I didn't know anything about electrolyte balance. Didn't know anything about any of the stuff that I know now. I could have used Keto Clarity back in the day, but anyway, so it was not comfortable. Let's put it that way. And so your question was, did I ever feel the need to binge? No, I was actually, when I got beyond the initial, oh my God, what is this pain I'm dealing with for about 3 days? It really did get better very quickly. Like within that first week, I started to feel better. By the end of 2 weeks, I was like, all right, why am I not hungry? I couldn't figure that one out. I'm supposed to be eating. It's lunchtime and I'm supposed to be eating. Why am I not hungry? And it was shocking to me because I'd never been on a diet before where hunger was not the central focus. And people that have been on low calorie diets and low fat diets, you know what I'm talking about. And I've even had dietitians say, oh, it's okay to feel a little hunger every once in a while. I'm like, no, it's not. Hunger means your body is screaming at you for some kind of nutrients, whether it's macronutrients or micronutrients. It needs nutrients. And so I don't allow myself to get hungry. And that was the first thing I really noticed when I started this is the hunger just went away very naturally. I did end up totally losing 180 pounds that year, but then life in the coming years after that, when I started blogging and podcasting, life happens. 2008, I lost my brother Kevin at the age of 41. He had heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and morbid obesity. He was probably 500 plus pounds when he died. And that was hard. That was a hard loss that I know took a toll on me. And it was 2008. So those next, 2-3 years, I put on a little bit of weight back on. Not all of it. There's kind of this meme out there. Jimmy Moore gained back all of his weight. I'm still over 100 pounds down and have been for, 14 years now? 2004 to 2018? Yeah, so 14 years. And yet nobody ever recognizes.
Something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wait, so do you think it was like the stress of that, or was it like, did you change your diet because of that, or?
See, here's the thing. No, I did not change the diet at that point. My diet didn't really change until I went paleo and started kind of shifting to more paleo, getting more real foods into my diet. when I was on the Atkins diet, I was playing a little bit of the Atkins games. Food quality doesn't matter. Have pepperoni rolled up in American cheese. Again, you learn and you add to the knowledge. So at the time, that's what I knew. And then I learned better later. But no, I didn't binge on any food. I'm well over those days. I mean, I could look at Coke and just puke now. It's just so disgusting to look at.
Agreed.
Same with Little Debbie snack cakes. And sometimes I'll put it in my mouth. I just want to try it when I'm at a party or something. Oh, there's that thing I used to eat. And I'd put it in the mouth now and of course spit it out and I go, why did I think that ever tasted good? I mean, it's plastic now.
Yeah.
I actually ate a Reese's peanut butter cup the other day, one of the mini ones, because it was at work and I actually didn't eat it. I literally spit it out. I was like, this tastes absolutely disgusting.
It's wax.
Yeah.
It is wax. It tasted gross. I will never do that again.
Well, especially when you eat quality food and you have like dark chocolate, like real dark chocolate quality with cacao nibs all through it. And then you go to this Reese's and you go, get out of here.
Yeah. And I think that it works though, because people, not only are their taste buds just messed up, but people are just so chronically hungry. Like I remember just feeling so hungry all the time. Anything in my mouth would taste good. So if it was a fake, really just tasted like plastic, I still thought it tasted good because it had artificial sweetener in it. Because I was just so hungry for anything. But okay, so you're doing Atkins, and at that time, were you pretty high protein? What were your macros like?
So the Atkins diet had a very interesting position when it came to fat and protein. So carbs were low always. It was start at 20 grams, stay at 20 grams until you figure out your carb tolerance. You may be able to go up to, at 5 gram increments each week to find your carb tolerance. It never got above 25, 30 for me. I have noticed, though, that my body's starting to heal a little bit, ever so slowly, that now I can maybe push it to maybe 35 grams, so a little bit higher carb tolerance, but still pretty low for most people's standards. And that's total carbohydrates, not net carbs. And so yeah, I mean, I went on this, and Atkins didn't say anything explicit about moderating protein or increasing fat. He said, keep the carbs low and then eat fat and protein to satiety. That was it. He didn't really kind of give you guidance. And so what happened was our fat phobic society said, okay, I'm going to go on the Atkins diet. Let me have a chicken breast and let me have broccoli. And that's all they'd eat. And there's no butter on the broccoli, chicken breast instead of a whole chicken or chicken leg and some of the fattier meat of chicken. I don't eat chicken now, by the way, because it's just way too lean for me to be ketogenic. Chicken breast anyway. I do still I like legs and thighs. Those are good. But yeah, I think Dr. Atkins had it dead right about the carbs, but he needed that nuance of keto. Now, he mentioned the K word all through his book. I mean, he talked about putting in a state of ketosis. And of course, at the time that he wrote that book, there were only very rudimentary ways to measure for ketones in your body, primarily through the urine. So you'd pee on this stick, it'd be pink to purple, and it's kind of gross. And it would show you your level of ketones spilling out of the urine. We now know that's called acetoacetate. But there's two other ketones in the body that we now have very sophisticated tools for measuring the presence of ketones. So the main one, and there's a little bit of debate about this, the guy that created the breath ketone meter, the Ketonics, told me on my Livin La Vida low carb show recently that, breath is far superior as a way to measure your ketosis and how well you're doing. Okay, everybody believes, though, that it's the blood that is the gold standard. And so Ketonics is the way you can test it in the breath. That one's called acetone. And then the beta-hydroxybutyrate is the ketone in the blood. And that one you can measure. I've got a meter at bestketonetest.com if you want to check it out. But the Keto Mojo you can get there and test your blood sugar and blood ketones with the same meter, 2 different strips. And yeah, I think the nuances of it has to come into play. That if you're more sensitive to carbohydrate, you're going to be very sensitive to those protein effects, and you guys learned about this in your NTP training, gluconeogenesis effects of too much protein. The body can't store protein. It's got to do something with that protein that you're not using. And what it does is it converts it through the liver into glucose. Well, glucose is very anti-ketogenic because you're trying to be a fat burner, not a sugar burner. Glucose is sugar. And so that's why moderating protein is so key. These people that push the high protein keto, they must work out like a fiend to get rid of that glucose, because I simply cannot see success when I'm having that much protein.
How did you find, like, tell me more about that transition of finding that nuance to switching from just Atkins to learning more about going like keto and moderating your protein? Like, how did you find that?
Get on my radar screen? Yeah. It was two researchers, Dr. Jeff Folick and Dr. Steve Finney. They had written a book called The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, which they gave me the great honor of writing the very last chapter in. This was before I had my book deal with Victory Belt. And they're like, hey, we love your work. We love what you're doing. Can you give a patient's perspective about low carb? I'm sure. So I wrote the last chapter in that book. Well, the very next book that came out from them was The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance. It was meant to be a book for athletes, how they can do a ketogenic approach in athletic performance. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll read it. It doesn't apply to me because I'm definitely not an athlete. So I read it, and in the middle of it, it talked about testing for blood ketone. So at the time, the only ketone I knew about was the urine ketone. And so they said, well, it's a very hard meter to find. It's kind of obscure right now. The strips will cost you $5, $6 a piece. And so it's not very economically feasible. I'm like, I don't care. I want to try this. So I test my blood, and my very first reading was 0.3. Now, nutritional ketosis is above 0.5, well over 1. If you want to be in therapeutic level. So I was not in ketosis despite being low carb for many years. And there is this meme out there too, just cut your carbs and you'll be in ketosis. I'm like, you live in fantasy land if you believe that. So that moderating the protein was what came into play. And I found that I was eating way too much like chicken breast and lean proteins, and even overall quantities of protein, that I went back to about the size of my palm worth of meat, and then maybe a couple of eggs. So that moderated protein down from maybe 140 grams a day, 130, 140 grams that I was having with the Atkins diet, suddenly down to about 80 to 90 grams a day. And just that one move started the needle moving with weight, with blood ketones, with blood sugar coming down. I ended up doing an entire 1-year experiment. The experiment was supposed to be, let's test this nutritional ketosis thing for like 3 months and then share the results. But it was so phenomenally successful after 3 months. I'm like, well, let's go another 3 months. And then 6 months, I'm like, okay, I don't want to stop. And so a year later, I finally did stop. But I was testing morning and night with the meter on the blood ketones and blood sugar, and sharing all the results. I have a whole chapter in Keto Clarity all about that experiment and how it went. But for me, it put on my radar screen, this is so much more than just about unlimited fat and protein. The protein has to count, and it has to count a little bit less than I thought, in terms of I can't have as much of it as I thought. It's not a free-for-all.
Yeah. And I just saw, though, that you did this high protein experiment.
I did a
right?
free-for-all.
I want to know like why you did that and what it even was, and just what your experience was with that. Because I saw what you're eating. That was crazy. Yes. Like the amount of protein. It
was gross. And let me tell you the why. So I have a brand new podcast on Fridays called the Keto Hacking MD podcast. So another one of those medical doctors that I team up with, and he's all up into biohacking, and he's very much a proponent of ketogenic diets. And so I was talking to him, and I said, hey, let's do this podcast together, because we both have a shared interest in doing like N=1 experiments. So what we did was we heard all the murmurings out there about protein being kind of the basis of a keto diet in some people's eyes. In fact, we found a medical doctor, Dr. Ted Naiman, who actually uses this kind of an approach, a higher protein, more moderate fat, low carb diet to help his patients lose weight, get lean, blah, blah, blah. And so I said, okay, well, let's go to him and have him help design kind of a study. In this case, a study of 2, me and John. And so he sent us this protocol where we ate 3 parts protein to 1 part fat. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 grams of protein for every 1 gram of fat. And so, and it was based on, your lean mass. And so you had to have your lean mass, and then you multiply that times 1.5 to get that protein number. And then you take the lean mass and multiply that times 0.5. So that's the 3-to-1, 0.5 to 1.5. It's hard to do these numbers on the radio, but it worked out to 270 grams of protein and only 90 grams of fat. Now that's a significant 3-to-1 protein to fat ratio. And yes, it hurt.
You're just shoveling chicken breasts into your mouth at that point.
I was having to do turkey bacon and Canadian bacon and 90-10 ground beef, which was still too high in fat. And just every lean possible thing. My favorite meal, because we had family in town, that woman that gave me the Atkins book, I was cursing her name. I'm just kidding. I was, I'm doing this opposite of what you sent me diet. We went out to the Outback Steakhouse, and I was looking at their menu going, what in the world can I order? And I saw filet mignon had 65 grams of protein and only like 15 grams of fat. Winner, winner, winner. Let's get that one. So, So yeah, I did this experiment, and the purpose was we wanted to show, okay, people are pushing a high protein diet. This is a protocol that was set up from one of the medical doctors that is a proponent of this. Not that we were trying to make him look bad or anything, but I wanted to show, look, this high protein thing ain't for everybody. And neither my co-host John or I did well on that. I had 15 bouts of hypoglycemia in 7 days. Now, that ain't fun. After the first one, I called him and I went, am I going to have to deal with this all week? He's like, I have no idea. Yep, I sure did. And then he lost ketones and felt crappy the whole week. So I think some people might do well with higher protein and more moderate fat, low carb. But at the end of the day, I knew one thing verifiably. It wasn't for Jimmy Moore.
What was the doctor's response like to what you were saying?
That. Yeah. So listen to ketohackingmd.com. We've got Dr. Naiman coming back on the show. He was on the show describing when we told him what we were doing, and he was kind of giving some predictions of what he thought would happen. He was totally wrong, by the way. And so we're going to have him back on the show here in the next couple weeks to share all about that.
You're giving enough cliffhangers.
Yeah. I'm curious though, like, would you do it again, but maybe just not something as extreme, like not that 3-to-1 ratio, but more of like an even 50-50 split? Or
yeah, some people said, well, why don't you do it now as a 1-to-1 ratio? Yeah. I'm like, well, 1-to-1's keto. I mean, basically, if you do the percentage of calories because of the increase in the amount of fat, and 1 gram of fat has 9 calories and 1 gram of protein has only 4 calories. So if you do a 1-to-1 ratio, that's basically 70-30. That's pretty keto. I mean, it might be a little bit too much protein for me. I would do maybe an 80-20, 80% and 20% fat to protein. But yeah, I think. No, I'm in no. Number one, I'm sick of meat now. We did it all meat as well, just to kind of keep the carbohydrate out of the, as a confounding variable, because people would have been like, well, you got the hypoglycemia because you had carbohydrate and blah, blah, blah. No, we had 0 carbohydrate. And I even did one test where we tested kind of a 2-hour postprandial insulin response, and it jumped 14 points, and all I had was protein. And so it was pretty profound to me, and what it showed me, and what I wasn't trying to make anybody look bad, but I was trying to show the community, look, you're hearing these people talk about eating more protein. Here is the unintended consequence of that. What I know would have helped me, Christina, is eating more fat with that. And so to that 1-to-1 ratio, I probably would have been okay. And the reason I think that is I did do a 1-to-1 ratio where I had like 5 eggs in the middle of the day to try to stave off the hypoglycemia that I was dealing with. Well, the 5 eggs was basically a 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein.
Yeah.
protein. So I felt great after those. I didn't have any hypoglycemia, but as soon as I went back to the higher protein again, it was problematic. And so the reason we did this experiment and explicitly making it that 3-to-1 ratio, and I didn't want to fall below that, is we were testing the effects of protein. Dr. Naiman had told us it's impossible to overconsume protein. You can't eat too much protein. I've yet to see a single patient eat too much protein. And so I took them to heart and I said, okay, well, let's test that.
Try me.
I kind of want to test that.
Oh, no, you don't. But go ahead. I'm looking at my journal now. Day 5, I had 298 grams of protein, 84 grams of fat, a 3.59 ratio of protein to fat was 1,945 calories, 61% protein, 39% fat. And here's the other thing, because you can't have fat in great amounts on this, I was well below the calorie counts that I would normally consume. So I'm typically having 2,400 to 2,600 calories in a day. And for this entire experiment, because of the limitation on the fat, unless I ate a lot more protein, I would have never gotten anywhere close to that 2,400 to 2,600. It ended up being an average of about 1,850 to 1,900 calories a day.
Wow.
Okay.
So
yeah.
we have a follow-up experiment we're going to do that's going to test the flip side. We're doing a 90% fat, 10% protein experiment coming up in the next couple of months. I've got a lot of travel coming up with the low-carb cruise and different things. But when we're back from all that travel, we're doing this 90% fat, 10% protein, and then juxtaposition all of those same numbers that we tested: ketones, blood sugar, insulin. We did an inflammation marker. We did an NMR lipoprofile, and we'll share all that same data and keeping calories exactly the same as they were for the protein experiment, just to see if there's any difference.
I'm very curious to see how that goes. I'm excited for you to do that. And I want to get to the calorie thing in a second, but first, I think a lot of people push the high protein for satiety. Like, what do you think about if somebody is eating a ketogenic and they're hungry, what would you suggest?
So I've heard for many years, and it was pushed pretty heavily in the paleo community when I was there, and even Dr. Naiman, who was on our show talking about eating more protein. Well, the reason you're eating more protein to this 3-to-1 ratio is you're trying to get this protein leverage satiety. So it's his thinking that if you eat enough protein that your body feels satisfied, that you'll get full. Well, I didn't ever feel full. I would eat a meal. And in fact, I'm going to pull back up that day that I was just telling you about. I had 20 ounces of chicken breast. Oh, that was the day that I did my test. So I had to eat chicken breast, and I cooked them in bone broth because they definitely needed flavor. It was 125 grams of protein and about 13 grams of fat. And let's see, let me look at my notes. So within an hour and 10 minutes, I was already hungry again, and I had 5 chicken breasts. And so I didn't find that protein was very satiating at all, whereas on a ketogenic diet, the typical ketogenic diet, if someone says they're hungry, they're either eating too many carbohydrates and or protein, or they're not eating enough fat, or a little of both. And so I tell people, if you kind of get that hunger, you get kind of a carb craving, have like a little slice of cheddar cheese, or your favorite cheese, hard cheese, and then put some grass-fed butter on it, stick it in your mouth, and that will satiate you so much. Now, there's a little bit of protein in the cheese, obviously, but the primary macronutrient in that little snack is fat. And so it's that fat that I think is much more satiating than protein will ever be. Now, maybe there's a biochemical thing that makes that different in other people, but for people like me with insulin resistance, I can tell you fat is so much more satiating than protein will ever be.
I was going to say, do you think that was an issue with blood sugar? Because you know that you've had in the past like a damaged metabolism, insulin resistance, blood sugar issues. For people that have a history of that or are dealing with that, do you think that's why they're not getting full off of protein?
Oh, for sure. And I would go back to my comment that I made about if you're sensitive to carbohydrates, you have to be very conscious of moderating your protein because of that gluconeogenesis. So if you're sensitive to the glucose effects of carbohydrates, you're going to be sensitive to the glucose effects of the protein you consume. So if you eat that, and keep in mind, protein through gluconeogenesis doesn't just suddenly turn into glucose like a simple sugar would. It has to take a little time. And so that time for me, at least during my experiment, always seemed to be right around the 90-minute mark. Right around 90 minutes, I suddenly felt the effects of having high protein turning to sugar in my body. And it manifested in my body as hypoglycemia. In my co-host who was doing this same experiment, he would see his blood sugar spike up. Now he would have like 60 something blood sugar, and then 2 hours after eating protein, he'd be in 100 something, and so that's not a good response. Either one of us had a good response, and so I think you just kind of have to figure it out, tinker and test. I mean, if you want to give that test a go, Christina, good luck, but I don't recommend it.
I just
don't
love
want to put pain on friends. This would go from the SUP podcast to the Sucks podcast really quick.
I appreciate it. Well, okay. I also want to let's talk about the whole debate. Do calories matter when you're in ketosis?
Great question.
Do they?
So do calories matter? Jimmy, tell us the whole story.
Tell us.
So if you listen to the internet chatter, well, Jimmy thinks calories don't count. Well, okay, that's not exactly true. What I do believe is that when you're nourishing your body with the right mix of macros for you, which you've got to tinker and test and figure that out, when you're getting enough of all the micronutrients and the minerals and everything that the body needs to feel happy and healthy, and you're able to listen to your body's satiety signals and be very tuned into those, you don't need to worry about your calories. That doesn't mean the calories don't count. It just means you no longer have to play the game of counting calories. You know why I'm so anti-calorie? I'm going to go on a rant here.
Do it.
I'm anti-calorie because I think it's the last vestige that these food companies have to hold on to keep peddling their crap. And so as long as they have the calorie message being put out there, well, it's just about calories. And this is inspiring, by the way, yet another N equals 2 that we're going to do on our podcast. We're going to test a 1,500 calorie meal that's ketogenic. So like a steak and eggs and vegetables with butter. And then we're going to juxtapose that to a 1,500 calorie meal of the crappiest crappy garbage you've ever seen in your life. So which do you think is going to be worse? But if you ask the calorie people, those two meals are exactly the same. And it's just one meal. It's not 7 days. So I talked to him. I said, can we please just do that like one meal and not for 7 days? So yeah. So we're going to show what happens hormonally to insulin, what happens to blood sugar, what happens to your ketone levels, what happens in how you feel, hunger levels. All of those things matter. And so in that context, 1,500 calories of ding-dongs, ho-hos, Coca-Cola. He wanted to do 1,500 calories of just drinking Coke. So I'm like, my stomach's revolting already.
Yeah.
No, I would not do that. So we're going to do that test. But I think at the end of the day, the only reason calories still matter is because food companies make them matter. And you'll see it. There's little stickers on like the soda cases, and like, have you been to like a soda machine lately? They got this little sticker that says, well, we know the calories count, so make them count best.
Oh,
and
God.
So, they put those kind of little subliminal messages out there. And so people, well, as long as I keep my calories low. In fact, I'll get really real here. Christine's cousin just had a heart attack. He's 39 years old, had a heart attack. He wrote me and he said, can you help me do this keto thing? I think I need to kind of get this under control. I said, absolutely. And so he wrote me back and he said, well, I've cut my calories way, 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 way low. I didn't say cut your calories way, way, way low.
Yeah.
And so it's just this notion that our culture says, if you want to get healthy, you have to cut the calories, and your body will revolt if you under eat calories. Again, I think getting adequate calories, or if you're going to go the flip side, go to no calories and fast for 3 days, 6 days, 7 days, whatever. That's going to be a whole lot healthier for you than eating 500, 600, 700 calories thinking you're doing something good for your body.
Right. What about, but keto specifically for weight loss, I still feel like people are talking a lot about calories. Even like we were saying, the Keto Connect people, like I'm familiar with them. I watch their stuff. They count calories, and their goal is kind of like to stay in shape.
But they're also talking to an audience of newbies.
Right.
And if you're a newbie, you probably should count calories. You probably should count grams of carbohydrates. You probably should count fat grams and all of this stuff just to kind of get it down. When you get the gist of this and you're living La Vida keto and you're enjoying the life of it, I think at that point, calories become a lot less significant in your life to count, and you're more interested in, what new vegetable can I eat this week? Or, ooh, that looks good. I've never had lamb before. Let me have that. And so you get more food curious, and you get just more, you're living your life rather than making it a math game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what is your vegetable consumption like?
It's pretty low. And because the carb tolerance is so super low, like I told you earlier, I have noticed it started to get a little higher than it used to be. And that was a surprise because I've been at like 25, 30 forever total carbohydrate. And people, they rag me a little bit because they say, well, why do you count total carbs? Because we know vegetable carbs, those carbs don't count. I'm like, you want to bet? I can see a blood glucose rise if I have way too many vegetables. And so I have to keep them pretty moderate. Now, I'm a big fan of baby spinach. I could eat me a big old baby spinach salad and just be happy as a camper. And so I do love that from time to time, and I will do that to be mindful of the microbiome. And that's the other thing, people, how do you feed your microbiome if you're ketogenic? It's this beautiful thing called green leafy vegetables. And so I feed them and try to do that at least a few times a week, a really big salad, as Mark Sisson calls it, a big ass salad. And so I'll try to do that. But I can't do it every single day. It would have consequences for me. And that shocks people because they're like, oh my gosh, it's vegetables. It's kind of like the fruit thing. Oh, you don't eat fruit. Well, it's like sugar. It's nature's candy. And well, it's natural. I'm going to say, yeah, it'll naturally raise my blood sugar. And so I have to be careful with those things.
What about the keto-friendly sweeteners like stevia, xylitol, erythritol? Do you use those?
Yeah, I like a liquid stevia, and I like good quality non-GMO erythritols. But here's the thing. I mean, I used to be a sweet fiend. I don't really eat a lot of sweet stuff anymore, and that shocks people too. Well, you must be eating all this keto crap because you're still fat. And so, you get that kind of commentary. And so I'm like, please come live with me for a week. You see, I'm not the whatever you think I am. But yeah, I still use those if I'm going to have those kinds of things. That would definitely be my two go-to sweeteners: liquid stevia and non-GMO erythritol.
I am curious. Sorry, random, but does Christine do keto too?
Oh yeah. So in 2011, we had been trying to get pregnant for a long time, and we did this embryo adoption where it was a fertilized egg and they stuck it in her, and I had to shoot her with progesterone shots. And so we got pregnant with twins. And so she started, and we contacted Chris Kresser at the time, and he said, get her on liver. And so I made little liver slivers for her and froze them in the freezer like he said to do. And she was swallowing those. And so she started eating more keto and trying to clean it up. We ended up losing the babies after 2 months. So we never did have kids, but she stuck with the keto. And yeah, she eats a ton of fat, even though she has no gallbladder anymore. She had that taken out in 2006. That's a common question I get. How do you do it without a gallbladder? I'm like, let me tell you, or switch you over to my wife and she'll tell you all about it. And so, yeah, she does do keto.
Does it look any different than, I was going to say, does it look different than your keto? Like, does she eat more carbs? Does she stay pretty low carb? She
used to be able to have about 70 grams of carbs and be ketogenic. as she's gotten a bit older and things have changed hormonally for her. She had to have a hysterectomy because of endometriosis that was just overtaking her body. It was just miserable for her. I'm like, we're never going to have kids. Just get it all taken out if you want. So she did. And so that changed things in her where her tolerance became way, way, way lower than it used to be. But she's far healthier than she's ever been now because of the keto. And I'll tell you a cool story. When she went keto, she was born preemie. And so the doctors gave her way too much oxygen. This was the early 70s when medicine was very primitive about babies. And so they gave her too much oxygen, and it literally made her blind in one eye, and it was starting to do it in the other eye before they noticed it. So she was progressively getting worse and worse and worse vision throughout her entire life. In fact, her dad told me when I asked him if I could marry her, he said, she's going to be blind by 35. And I said, I don't care. I love her. And so he said, okay, you can marry her. And so every year we were buying these brand new $600 prescription glasses, like Coke bottle type glasses, and it would get worse and worse and worse. Well, she went keto 2011, and that next year she went for her checkup, and the doctor said, you're not going to believe this. Your eyesight got better. And I said,
wow.
What? Because for the first time in her entire life, it didn't go backwards. It went forward. And I'm like, well, let's find those old glasses that I have from last year. Mm-hmm. And then she's been stable at this exact same prescription for 7 years.
Wow.
Because of keto.
That's incredible.
Now, to me, that's powerful. Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm the keto guy. I couldn't believe that.
Are there, in general, because you have just a lot of experience talking to people in general, do you notice any differences between the way, general trends with men and women doing keto?
Yeah, I think there's this notion out there that women respond differently, not just to keto, but to fasting. I haven't seen this. I've seen enough women do incredibly well on keto. I've seen women do incredibly well on fasting and vice versa. I've seen men not do well on keto and men not do well fasting. So I don't think it's gender specific. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit of your personality type, whether, if you like the foods that are involved in it. Even for Christine, it took her a little bit of adjustment because she didn't have a gallbladder, but she realized, which of the fats that she could consume, like butter and coconut oil, that she didn't need a lot of bile production to help emulsify. And so, you work around what's right for you, and then you figure it out. I don't think it runs along gender lines at all.
Gotcha. Oh, interesting. I think it's really interesting because I do think biologically there is a difference and why it could be different for both of us. But I also think there's such a divide between, in the community, there's women can't fast. There's people that say women shouldn't fast or women need more carbs. And I think the reason that there is such a divide is because those people state their opinion and then their audience revolves around that opinion. So they have a whole group of people that related to that and back them up. And then same with the other side of people saying well, I'm a woman and I do fasting. And then they attract all the women that do fasting. So I think there's just everyone attracting opposite audiences. I don't think anyone's right or wrong. They just all they attract the people that relate the most to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does. And I there was a really famous paleo woman that dissed fasting for women. And of course, every time I would start talking fasting, that's bad for women. And I'm going, yeah, I know where that came from. I really don't agree with it, but okay, it's great. But it's fascinating to me how things like that get out there in the community and people just automatically believe it without ever giving it a go. I always say, just give it a try, whether it's keto or fasting. Give it a try and see how you respond. Don't rely on what some expert told you or supposed expert, a blogger in this case, tells you. And that's the other thing that's pretty fascinating about all these N1 experiments I've done over the years. I've done so many of them, and people are like, well, I guess that proves that that's not good. I'm like, no, it proves nothing other than what happened to Jimmy Moore. I just showed you what happened to me. Now you need to test it. Not you, Christina. Don't do high protein. But now you need to test it and see how you do.
Yeah, exactly. I also wanted to ask you about, one thing with keto is you're eating similar foods over and over again. Have you had any experiences developing food intolerances from that?
Oh, yeah. I had that run. I was at Keto Con last year in Austin, and this lady said, have you ever had a food tolerance test run? I'm like, no, haven't had that done. Well, I want to gift you one. So she gave me this kit and everything, and I took it home and did the whole, get squirting the blood out and putting the little dots all over. And it came back that I was highly, highly sensitive, food sensitive to eggs, both the yolks and the whites, to macadamia nuts, to almonds, all these keto foods. And I'm going, well, wait a minute. And eggs was really disappointing because I have backyard chickens and I get fresh eggs every day. So I guess I ate them a little often. And so I was so disappointed. And then she helped me analyze it. And she's like, well, those are the foods you eat a lot, right? Yeah. You shouldn't do that so often. And so I think mixing it up is a great idea so you don't become too sensitive to it. And even if it's good food, I think sometimes people fall into the trap of, well, eggs, it's a real whole food. It's the perfect food. Yes, it is, but not for 24/7, 365. You want to mix it up. And so I've been very deliberate. I had to be off of eggs completely, which how how hard it is to harvest eggs from your chickens every single day and not be able to eat them for about 6 months. That's what I just did the past 6 months. And so I'm just now reintroducing eggs into my diet, and slowly, about maybe once, twice a week right now. The thing is, I didn't feel bad from it. So there was no symptoms that told me anything was wrong. But this sensitivity test said something was really wrong. It was 5 times off the charts high.
That's interesting. And that usually is some sort of indicator of an underlying gut issue. Have you ever done a stool test before?
Gut. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I have all those issues. Christine's trying to help me with that right now.
Well, she's an NTP. She'll know.
She is.
Yeah, she'll help you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your information. You have a lot of books out. What do you have one that you want to tell the listeners to go out and get first?
Well, if you don't know anything about keto, and you've heard us talk about keto all day today, and you just I just want somebody to explain it in English, then I wrote a whole book just for you called Keto Clarity. That's my best-selling book. About 250,000 copies are out there. It's been translated into 8 different languages as well, so that's pretty cool as well.
That's awesome.
But that's the one that I would point people to first. You also heard us talk about fasting, so I had a whole book about fasting, The Complete Guide to Fasting. My latest book is called The Keto Cure, and I wrote that with Dr. Adam Nally, which we assume you understand keto, and then we talk about the metabolic pathway of various disease states, PCOS, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, all of these kind of diseases that people are dealing with, and it's all related to their diet and their lifestyle choices and their failure to control insulin. So we walk you through all that, and I have a really exciting project that's coming in September, especially for you two. And I definitely want to get back on your show again with my wife, Christine. She and I are writing a book together called Real Food Keto, Applying Nutritional Therapy to a Low-Carb, High-Fat Diet. So we're putting together the concepts that you guys learned about in your NTP training with a ketogenic approach, because I'm sure you get a lot of clients that go, I want to do this keto thing, and maybe NTPs don't understand it fully, and then vice versa. Maybe the client just wants a resource that they can look at while you're working with them. And so we're hoping this becomes kind of a go-to resource for NTPs and even people just interested in real food but don't know about keto, and vice versa. The keto community, I don't think, puts enough emphasis on the right syllable when it comes to real food.
Yes.
And so we're trying to bring these two communities together, and man, oh man, I haven't worked this hard on a book since Keto Clarity. It's going to be amazing. And Greg Graham has already agreed to write the foreword.
I love that. I'm so excited for that. You know what else I wanted to ask you about, because you touched on it when we saw you at the NTA conference, was the book, Will Cole's new book?
Yeah, the Keto-terian.
Yeah. Have you ever tried being a Keto-terian?
So his approach is kind of a vegetarian ketogenic diet, but he allows you to have eggs because it's very hard to get your protein in if you don't eat eggs. I would love to do that. That might be one of the hacks that Dr. John Lemansky and I do on our show at some point. I've mentioned to him that we should probably do that. We might do it closer to Will's book release to help him promote the book. But yeah, I'm not opposed to that. In fact, I've even talked with a vegan keto lady about co-authoring a book together about vegan keto. And if I get that book contract with her, I will definitely do it for a period of time just to kind of see what would happen. I mean, I would miss my meat because I love meat and I think it's a very nutrient dense. But I think a vegetarian styled keto could be done well. You just have to get ample amounts of fat, mostly from coconut bases. And if you can have eggs, that would be the easiest way to make sure you get plenty of fat and protein.
Do you think that would be a little bit higher in carbohydrates though, naturally?
I mean, it would have to be a bit higher. So that would be interesting to see how it reacts in someone like me that I know I have a very low carbohydrate tolerance. I can't have a lot of carbs or it starts showing up on a blood sugar meter. So that's what I want to test, Kara. I would love to see that. So yeah, stay tuned.
Yes, it's just an interesting, my thought, because the protein's naturally just going to be a little bit lower because you can't have any protein, but your carbs are going to be higher. So it'd be interesting to see if that dip in protein but higher carbs would kind of balance out in a way. But I don't know.
Well,
and even the protein sources like pea protein, you'd still be getting carbohydrate from pea protein. I'm not doing soy. I'm sorry. I no thanks. I don't want the estrogenic effects. And then whey also has issues. So, I mean, it would have to be kind of pea protein. I'm not eating beans. That would be really high in carbohydrate as well. So, yeah, you're kind of SOL if you don't eat eggs.
I feel like that would also get really repetitive, though. I feel like you would develop a lot of food intolerances because I feel like there wouldn't be that many options.
I don't think it would be optimal for me to do for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested in trying it at least to see. Yeah. See, here's the thing I hope people leave from today's podcast is it ain't about just, we telling you what to do and you go do it. It's you go do things, you try, okay, that didn't work. Now go the next thing and try, that didn't work. I want people to stay engaged in their nutrition and in their health. I could have given up years ago and ended up just like my brother. I would be 6 foot under today. But thank God I'm still here and I'm able to have a voice and to tell people and encourage people it's never too late. Just keep tinkering and testing and you'll eventually find what works for you.
Yeah, I agree. If that's an amazing note to end on. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we heard about all your books. Please name all your podcasts for us because you have 1,000.
Well, I missed a couple of the books. Cholesterol Clarity, if you worry about your cholesterol, definitely get that. And if you like recipes with keto, I wrote a book called The Ketogenic Cookbook as well. But the podcasts are pretty easy. Monday is the Nutritional Pearls podcast that I do with Christine. We take a lot of what you guys learned in your NTA training and we disseminate it over the airwaves. She's a little nervous behind the microphone, so I have to bring my A game to give her comfort. And she does a great job. I'm really proud of her for what have we done, 16 episodes, and she's already kind of over the uhs already. So she's doing well. So that's Mondays, nutritionalpearlspodcast.com. Tuesday, Wednesday is my flagship show, the Livin La Vida Low Carb Show. Been on since 2006. So that's the old man in the health podcasting world. And so it's not going away anytime soon. Tuesday, Wednesday, thelivinlowcarbshow.com. Thursdays, Keto Talk with Jimmy Moore and Dr. Will Cole. We answer questions all about ketogenic diets. We talk about the hot topics in keto, as well as a latest study and health headlines. We talk about that as well on that show, ketotalk.com. And then I already mentioned the Keto Hacking MD podcast, ketohackingmd.com, where we do a lot of biohacks of the ketogenic diet. So yeah, I'm a busy man, and I love being on Straight Up Paleo. So
okay, you're hired as our new co-host. All right,
you're listening to the Straight Up Paleo podcast.
We'll have you do our intro.
Hey,
we should.
That'd be fun.
We should. I'm down with that.
All right, everyone, all of our listeners, vote for Jimmy.
Vote for Jimmy.
Vote for Jimmy.
Now you got to say, now here are your SUP sisters. Take it away, Karen, Christina.
There you go. So you heard it from the man himself. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy, for coming on this podcast. It's always like a pleasure talking to you. And if people didn't know, you're pretty much like the nicest, coolest human being on the face of the planet. And you're just as real as you are in your podcast. Like some people, you see them in real life and you meet them and you talk with them and they're not the same. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they put on a show in front of the microphone, which is fine. That's fine if that's what they do. But you are legit the same cool, awesome person. And I applaud you for that and just being yourself 100% of the time. I think that's why you're so successful.
Thank you. I don't have time to be anybody but me.
I love it.
Yes, we love you.
Another
Thank you.
T-shirt idea. But thanks, Jimmy. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.